you see the prints of Snippy milling in a circle, and then you see no tracks, and then you can see where he's dropped. What's really interesting, so he was cauterized, all his skin and flesh was missing from the head up, brain cavities completely gone and dry, powder in the stomach. There was a lot of evidence around. They found a strange tool in the Chico brush, imprints in the ground, sheared off fence posts. I mean, it goes on and on and on, the things that they found around this mutilation.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mugshot Podcast. This is the first one we're doing on location, and we have a good friend of mine, Katie Paige. Now, you may know Katie, and she's been on the show before, she's been on many different shows as well as radio shows. Probably most notably, especially recently, is going to be Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. Season 3 just aired this year. But Katie's she has some stuff she wants to talk about today, and I'm really excited to hear it. So Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me back, Chris. How cool is this, right? Being on location.
This is awesome, except for the setup. By the way, I apologize. It looks like trash here. We're getting through the training phase, but we got a beautiful day. It's nice. It's warm out here. And so I really like it. And so thank you again for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So Katie, first and foremost, we talked about Beyond Skinwalker Ranch Season 3. So obviously Season 3 aired this year. Tell us about some of the high notes of the season. Anything that you really liked, that you enjoyed, any of the experiments that you did?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I want to thank Greg, the owner, for allowing us to be here today on location. And, actually the whole journey of revisiting this place from the childhood, I mean, they've been beyond gracious in allowing us to kind of investigate and try to find answers to some of the things my family and I and many, many others experienced in this area of Colorado. It's a beautiful location, and I always had so many questions. But for Season 3, having my big sister, back with me was beyond special. And it took a little bit of convincing to get her to come back. And
This was the first time she's been back.
This was the first time she's been back. And, the decision was made before even filming that episode. Do we come back initially together, or do we allow her to come back without me? And they decided to have her come back without me with her, which turned out to be really a neat experience for both of us, because it's sort of, having her go through the process that I did for Season 1 and just kind of getting her bearings, of what she remembered, where things took place, and having her go right to the landing site, which is right over your shoulder here, really validated for me. Yeah, like, this is the spot. And, she remembered things just like I remembered them. So that was kind of neat to do that. But
what was her emotional state? Like, when she came back, was it like a love-hate? Was she excited? Was she scared?
Yeah, I think I can't really speak for her, but I do know that she, it's not like she wasn't as curious about it or finding answers. I think she really was more in the mindset of just leaving it in the past and moving on with her life. So I kind of had to, hey, let's face it together. Let's revisit it together. And then when we're older, we can sit and reminisce about, hey, remember the time we went back? And so, but yeah, for her, she was a teenager. So she was like 15, 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
She actually came here after the high school prom. She went to the prom in Kiowa. So it was like a graduating class of 7.
Oh, no kidding.
And I know that when they left the high school prom and they came back here to this location, she had some encounters that frightened her. And I think, when you're compared to being 9, 10, 11 years old, and when you're a teenager, your memories are different and things kind of stick better, I guess, right? So, she I think had a lot of, like, when I went and watched that episode, you could see the emotion in her.
I see.
Coming back. So yeah, it affected her.
Well, and I have no doubt that obviously this ranch is where a lot of this activity is kind of centered. And so, for our viewers that aren't familiar, let's say they haven't seen the show yet or they're only familiar with Skinwalker, would I be correct in saying that this is, oh, I mean, even though they may not be linked officially, it's almost like a sister site. Like some of the activity that you may see over there, you would probably see a lot of the same stuff here or a different type of activity that's still unknown. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And really, this location and the activity out here, in the research I've done, I was curious, like, when did it start? Why was there such a huge peak of activity from 1975 to 1978 with a rash of hundreds of strange animal deaths? And we'll get into the Snippy case here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But what was going on at the time? Was it Black Axis military projects? There's all these sightings, hundreds of them actually, and a big research study was done on what are these blacked out helicopters flying around out here, all the animal mutilations going on,
Yeah.
all that stuff. This is where Linda Moulton Howe got her start as an investigative journalist. So,
Get out of here.
you know,
Didn't know that. That's interesting.
yeah, it's what from my perspective, when I'm a child, we were threatened and were not to talk about what was happening out here. And so,
Threaten you.
well, that disembodied crazy voice that came, basically, we have allowed you to remain, your friends will be instructed to remain silent concerning us. Who that us is, I don't know. It could have been Black Axis projects for all I know. I don't know that. I researched something, I think we talked about it before, the plasma ball technology and things like that. So I'm always one to try to find logical explanations for things, could have been something from somewhere else. I don't know.
Sure.
But one thing I did learn right away is that it wasn't isolated to this 80-acre ranch. It really affects the whole area of Elbert County from Franktown to Elizabeth, even outside to like Rama and Simla and, of course, Kiowa in this area of the Palmer Divide. So I've always looked into like, what is it about these high strangest locations across the country, whether it's, in Sedona, Arizona, or the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, the Dulce Base even. So you look at the Palmer Divide and the Archuleta Mesa are very similar, geologically speaking, with what rocks and minerals are found there.
Sure.
A lot of times there's aquifers and water. So we have the pond right behind you, but underneath our feet, there are two major aquifers, and really close to this location right here, we have two major aquifers that come together, the Dawson and the Denver.
Okay.
So there's these like water tables that are under our feet. Yeah. And that seems very common in high strangeness locations. But most of all, most of these, 90% plus, ping the charts of being extremely highly magnetic areas. So, yeah.
Would that play into, I have very basic knowledge, but I know that sometimes people talk about like ley lines and things like that, where you do get those areas where they do have different types of phenomena. Do you know if there's anything like that around here?
Yeah, I actually looked at the ley lines from these, and of course, Katie, as she does, I'm pinning on the Google Maps all these areas, and they do actually kind of fall into this pattern, just kind of whoop, boop, boop of some of these really high strangeness locations. So
No kidding.
I really feel like there's something to, the granite, the limestone, the water, and the high electromagnetic energy vortexes that we're in. In fact, just recently on the podcast that I do called The Trifecta, I had James Keenan, who is on Blind Frog Ranch, and we were talking about, even the solar cycles, and he has noticed an increase. So like just recently, we can see the northern lights here from Colorado.
Yeah.
And we're getting these big, solar bursts, solar flares coming and hitting with high energy on Earth. And it seems to be an uptick in activity when that happens. So.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I tell you what, you never know how that activity is going to manifest, but it is interesting how afterwards you can say, oh, well, we think it revolves around this. And so I think that's really cool. So, I mean, obviously, let's talk about some of the things that you've experienced here. So you talk about the landing site, and that's one of the reasons viewers and listeners behind us, we wanted to get the landing site back here. So what does that mean? What is the landing site in reference to?
Right. Well, the term was coined by Beyond Skinwalker.
Okay.
For me, it was just the spot of the weird circle where nothing grew.
Oh.
So my sister and I were out here on the weekend. I did not live here full time. My mom dated the gentleman that owned the property. So we actually lived 45 minutes away and would visit the ranch. And I always laugh and kind of joke about it. But honestly, I think if I lived here full time during the height of all that strange, unusual activity, I don't know if I'd, be back here doing what I'm doing. So I think having that kind of distance from it a little bit has helped me, be the researcher investigator that I am today. But
That's,
however,
you had time to kind of develop
yeah,
curiosity a little bit.
yeah, right. But that being said, I experienced things at my house too, and I didn't know about the hitchhiker phenomenon until
Oh, the
years
Phantom
later.
hitchhiker
The
phenomenon. Yeah.
Phantom hitchhiker. I think that was in play back then. I just didn't know what to call it. Anyway, but so we were out here once, on a weekend. The boys were here visiting their mom, and it was like a spring day, and we get this wet, heavy snow in the spring here in Colorado. And just right out here, we decided to go flip the frisbee, and we just happened to look down. It was just this dry dirt, and outside was snow. And we just thought it was weird. Nothing grew there. We're like, what is this? Why is this big circle there? Fast forward all the years later, when I acquired the APRO, the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization documents,
Mm.
and they mentioned that snowless circle. And in the report, not only do they measure it to be 75 feet in diameter, but they said there were drops of blood in the snow outside of the circle, and that they were two of them reported on the ranch. One here that I remember as a child, and there was one that backed up closer to, you can't see it because it's this way, but
Oh, okay.
we have the ponderosa pines behind the ranch house, and there on the hill there was another snowless circle that they measured, and that was in the report. So the investigator in me is like, well, was there a silo that sat there? Was there some sort of structure? What would cause that to be like that?
Yeah.
But there wasn't anything there.
What about,
So
was it ever, did you guys measure like any sort of radiation coming from it? Was there anything?
I know the production team Beyond Skinwalker did the what do they call that? The meter that on the drone where they run the magnetometer. They run the magnetometer over it, and they had the guys from what is that show? Oak Island.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had the ground penetrating radar guys out here from Oak Island,
Yeah.
and their the response that they got was quite interesting because they got readings so far down, and then at a certain depth, it just went completely black. Or they couldn't get any readings at all. And they said they had not seen that before, and it was very unusual. So I was hoping they could follow up on it, but I'm not sure. We'll see.
Did they have any ideas of what they thought that blackness? Because obviously it's not making it through it. So
Right. No.
no, none whatsoever. Wow, and those are the guys to ask. I mean, they've been digging at Oak Island for how long? I don't know.
I know it. And they even went down in the cistern here.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, I can remember sitting in the barn watching these guys go down into the cistern going, what are they going to find? I think they didn't find too much other than some old cans and things, but they really go the distance and try to, do things to find answers. So it was kind of cool.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, they go 100%, and that's what you'd expect from professionals like that. So we have the area over here, the landing site. I remember you saying something about a box at one point in time, and that was one of the biggest, most memorable phenomena that you experienced. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that's something I didn't talk about for years because it just seems so dang strange.
So tell us.
Yeah, so the memory I have with the box, me and the youngest son, there was an outbuilding here, and that was one of the cool confirmations I got from Greg right away. Because when I first met Greg for the first time, he was sharing photographs that they took when they first bought the property,
Mhm.
And I asked him, I'm like, I have this memory of this outbuilding that, Jack got something out of a tool, or I don't know what he got out of it. And then we got in the back of the pickup truck and started driving around the Ponderosa Pines behind the ranch house. And me and the youngest son were in the back of the truck. And for some reason, Jack pulled the truck over. We get out, and in the tree line, I would say 3 to 4 feet off the ground, was this strange looking box.
Okay.
And it had like illuminated lights from the inside, and it made like a bee hum sound, like if you're standing under electrical wires.
So like a metal box?
Like a box, yeah. It was
Okay.
yeah, to my memory, it was like a dull black color. I mean, it was just really quick. And Jack just started screaming, it's the box, get in the truck, get in the truck. And we jump in the back of the truck, And he takes off. I turned, and the thing was gone. And so what was fascinating about that is when I did acquire the reports, there was several other adults that had interactions with this box,
Really?
including the undersheriff, Bill Waugh. He claimed to be out on patrol one evening, driving. So the driveway on this used to come in from a different location
Okay.
back in the day. And he was near the gate to come into the property, sees a box by a tree where, what is this? Did not want to approach it. So he went into town to get a posse sheriff, comes back, and he said they witnessed the box and the tree as if it went underground. It
Kind of sank?
just sank, vanished, disappeared. I don't know. So that was another account. And then when my sister was here for season 3, up on that hill there, and she got pretty emotional recalling this, but she too had a box encounter on that hill that she remembers seeing. So, and also in the APRA report, there were cryptids reported here, the Bigfoot creatures and that. I don't know if they were in connection with whatever craft that were reported being seen here, but in the APRA report, it states that the ETs, now I didn't see any ETs, I'm not saying there was, I don't know what was going on, but that they said the boxes were lethal. And in the report,
okay.
it actually had a Sasquatch walk to the box and it dropped it to its knees. And that's what's reported in there. I'm not saying it's true or not true. That's just what's in the report.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, so they say it's lethal. I mean, boy, that's quite a leap if they didn't really. I mean, maybe would you agree that maybe they had more knowledge than necessarily was documented for them to come to that conclusion? Or do you think it was just them saying, we don't like it, we think it's really dangerous?
I think it was, if there were ETs here and they were warning the folks that were here that don't mess with these boxes. They could be lethal. They could be dangerous.
Okay.
And what's interesting about this and researching other cases, and even the Snippy case, they talk about witnessing a box out there in the San Luis Valley. Other cases with animal mutilations and high strangeness have report these strange boxes.
Yeah.
Even with Trey Hudson and down south, a large box now, different sizes, different dimensions, different descriptions, flying boxes in some of these reports. So, this is a theme that we're hearing over and over again. And sometimes with these strange animal mutilations, there are box sightings or encounters in connection with the animal mutilations. And I had, oh, beautiful raven. I had a person come up to me after a conference one time and she said, do you think that these strange boxes could be emitting like a frequency or a sound or something that is calming the cattle down? Because in some of these ranchers that I've interviewed through the years, they say in the pastures where these animals are being mutilated, the animals are calm and sort of huddled together. And in adjoining pastures, they're like freaked out
of control.
They're out of control.
Yeah.
So is that part of the process of that? And sometimes in these strange mutilation or animal deaths, these animals are actually pre-marked. So there was a investigator years ago that were just kind of scanning animals with black lights, and they actually found some of them are marked. So is that our military doing this for some reason? I don't know.
When you say marked, what does that mean? So they, with a black light, they could see
a marking like they were pre-tagged.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not like lettering or anything, just like a smudge or something on it?
I didn't want to say they were like a little triangle marks on them.
Oh, so like an actual design?
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy. And the owner,
find the report again, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Do you know if the owner knew anything about it?
No, it was just this one researcher. Let's look at these animals with black lights and things like that. So I'll have to find that and share it with you. It was pretty interesting read. But I'm like, that makes sense. And even on Skinwalker Ranch, you hear reports of some of these cattle, like they'll spin or start acting funny like 24 hours before the mutilation occurs. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. But
well, so I mean, obviously this box is, I mean, it's an unknown, almost to the point of being terrifying. I mean, if people say that it could be lethal, we don't know what it does. It sounds like even that undersheriff, if I was a cop in his position, I would think it was some sort of bomb, but why in the middle of the woods, What do you think it is? I mean, with all the data and everything that you've encountered and the fact that you have firsthand knowledge of it, do you have any speculation on what you think it actually is?
Yeah, I think through the years in finding little clues and pieces of evidence that really suggest a very clear. I mean, first of all, we know through documents that we did have soldiers visiting the property. And I just uncovered another piece of information I found rather fascinating. And so I know there was a military presence out here. So, in my personal opinion, I think at least the boxes that we're seeing here are probably connected to some black access military projects that were going on.
No
They were
kidding.
trying to communicate or put frequency in the air, pump the sound. Now, how they disappear, I don't know. That seems a little, I, I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to rationalize an unrational event. I tend to do that.
Well,
Like,
I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because me being former military and having a security clearance, I can't talk about all the stuff that I've seen. But that being said, there are things I'm sure that we have in our inventory that none of us are aware of. But then on the other side of things, I think to myself, well, we still haven't, you know, I don't think we're to the point where we're breaking the laws of physics yet. We haven't hit that. So having stuff just disappear, I don't think that's anything within our inventory, but that's just my personal
unless it's
thought.
cloaking. Were they
Oh,
developing
that's an
cloaking
interesting thought.
technology? I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's just, and same with the landing site. Is there something buried under there still to this day? I don't know. I mean, you would think you hear people talking about underground tunneling and underground bases and
Yeah.
even Mount Blanc out there in the San Luis Valley. Is there something under there? But there would be evidence, you would think, unless we're just that good at covering our tracks. Like, I don't recall, bulldozer piles or dirt piles or anything like that. So
Yeah.
how is that being done without people noticing something was going on? You hear rumors at Denver International Airport,
Sure.
where's all the
The
evidence?
Illuminati, they control that, right? I I don't know. I think it's so funny because having again worked in military capacity and being adjacent to the actual federal government and a lot of their positions, like the FBI, they could not find their ass with two hands and a map most on a good day, right?
He said it, not me.
That's my opinion. And so we get to these questions of, well, are they that good of keeping secrets? And it's gone on for 40 years. And I'm kind of on the one hand, I'm like, well, I think they're not good at keeping secrets, but they have a way of shutting people up. Now, I do 100% think that that's one of the things that's going on. But then there's also parts of me with some of these sightings where I'm like, there's no way, man. If there was someone in that program, you would have your Bob Lazar that goes out and, says something. And so obviously, I think it is probably something, some sort of alien species or extraterrestrial, whatever it happens to be. But yeah, the federal government, in my opinion, they've never been excellent at hiding things. So it makes me wonder what else is out there. But
Yeah.
you as an investigator, okay, you've been UFO adjacent, I would say, for 90% of your life at this point. Um, what's the most compelling piece of evidence that you have ever seen to make you believe that there's something else out there that you can think of off the top of your head?
That's a really good question. And when it comes to paranormal, ghostly kind of unusual encounters, because I've experienced it time and time again, I
Yeah.
have no doubt that that's happening.
Okay.
Yeah, even just recounting an incident Greg here had, just in his shop there with hearing things fall or moving without any explanation. So those things happen. When it comes to the UFO phenomena,
Mhm.
I think some of the best compelling evidence for me personally is to go back in history and visit. Richard Haynes is a good example. He has his collection at the Heritage Center in Wyoming. He focused strictly on military pilots, commercial pilots,
Sure.
private pilots. And so when you have, 15 plus boxes of well organized case reports from numerous pilots in the skies that are familiar with what's flying around up there, it's compelling.
Absolutely.
So that says to me something's going on. And the other piece that compels me that, you know, wow, how do I explain this would be, here at the ranch, we had those two sketches that were in the APRO files from the 70s of an ET creature that, and we, or Paul Giamatti actually named the Tubi guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, remember that?
Absolutely.
And so I kept that drawing to myself. It was nowhere in public. It was not out there in the world. And then I invited a gentleman for Colorado MUFON at the time, which was the Mutual UFO Network for the state of Colorado. And we had a guest speaker come speak, and he wrote a book called Flashbacks. Sean Bartok is his name. And I'm watching his presentation, and up pops almost an identical ET that they encountered. And I come to find out his ranch, 14 miles this way.
No kidding.
So 14 miles away, there's a sketch of this Tubi extraterrestrial, and he had the same encounter within a few years, 14 miles of almost the identical same type of creature. And they're very unusual. It's not like your typical gray or typical, like, it had larger than our eyes, wrinkles here, these strange tubes, very unusual, very skinny, spindly arms and legs.
Yeah.
So to have Sean Bartok experience the same things and a lot of the same activities, circles on the ground, snowless circles on the ground, the strange hum sounds, the orbs going on and off, and he's just right there. So that's pretty compelling in my mind. Like, we didn't know each other. How does that happen?
Yeah, two completely separate people, no connection, that have similar experiences. I mean, as an investigator, I would say absolutely there's something. It may not necessarily be, a direct evidence per se, but I mean, any investigator would say there's something to that, 100%.
I even did a composite, the drawing over one on top of the other, and let the magic happen. And I'm like, okay, that would probably pass in a court.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so let's talk about skeptics for a minute. I always go back to something I heard on Joe Rogan at one point in time. Neil deGrasse Tyson was his guest. Now, he has his own podcast, Star Talk, and he is, I don't know if I would say leading astrophysicist, but he is probably the most well-known, in my opinion. And Joe Rogan, he is very interested in, I think he's on the fence. Some days it's aliens, other days it's, interdimensional creatures, and he's still trying to figure out what he believes in. But that being said, there was a discussion they had, and Neil deGrasse Tyson was completely against the idea of any extraterrestrial or interdimensional anything. He didn't believe it. He said there's nothing else out there. And when I heard that, I was almost in disbelief, because it seems like we have so much evidence, and yet you can still put it in front of one of the, like, a very top mind in the United States, and he's like, nope, it's garbage. I still don't believe it. I mean, what are your thoughts on something like that? How come some people, they can look at something, it can stare them straight in the face, and yet they just don't believe it?
Yeah, that's a good question. First, I'd like to say I think skeptics are needed, and I'm a skeptic on many things, or at least I'll start as a skeptic until I have enough documents or what I consider enough to convince me that something must be going on here. So I think it's normal to go through that process.
Sure.
Phil Klass is a very famous UFO skeptic from back in the day, and I loved reading the back and forth through Dr. Leo Sprinkle and Phil Klass, and hearing, because you need the other side to kind of keep you grounded.
Sure.
And it's easy when you're investigating the more controversial, conspiratorial topics like ghosts and cryptids and UFOs. You need to have some skepticism to stay grounded. So that's important. But somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who, I think there's people out there that's their job, to downplay the phenomena in general. Like, no, there's nothing to this. I'm the expert. I should know. Believe me. And it's bunk. It's not true. There's so much. And the more you dig on this, and that's why I am so passionate about history and historical documents, because if Congress, if our government, if the average person saw the body of evidence, and a lot of it's very credible, I think you would have to come to the conclusion there's something going on here.
At least be open to it.
At least be open to it, because, yeah.
Well, because when I listened to that episode, he was completely closed off from it. And I'm not saying that he's wrong for thinking that way. It really shocks me, because someone like that, without being smacked in the face by an actual alien that beamed down from a UFO, you'll never get him to flip on that, I don't think. And so I wouldn't call him a skeptic. I would call him a non-believer. I think skeptic implies someone is at least open, but it's gonna take a lot of convincing. I don't think someone like that, it doesn't matter what you put in front of them.
Yeah, that's true. And somebody that's so grounded and we were talking about this topic just on the drive over here. You if you're so grounded in materialism,
Mhm.
and sometimes you have too much equipment, and even for like ghost hunters or investigators, and there's so much in their science mind where they're going to capture with this equipment and that equipment, they're kind of hurting the intuitive connection that I think a lot of this phenomena requires. It requires you to be open to it.
Yeah.
There's, I think, and this can speak to the nature of reality itself, but how much do we interact with the phenomena? And you hear about the double split experiment where, just observing something is going to change its behavior. So you have to at least have an open mind and have some sort of expectation that you will experience something or you won't.
Yeah.
Because I think we are active participants in these strange phenomena. So if you're that closed off, then he won't ever experience anything because he doesn't believe it. So it won't happen.
I can totally see that. I mean, they say, like psychics, again, some people may believe, some people may not believe. But people who are open to that are more likely to have some sort of, psychic experience or something where you're right. If you've completely closed off that portion of your brain, it's never going to happen. It's never just going to flash in there.
Yep.
So I want to move on and I want to talk about your newest book as well as the thing that you released at Contact in the Desert, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the tale or the story of Snippy, right? Did I get that right?
That's right. So Tony Antiola was the main author of the book, and I co-authored with Tony. And you can find the book on Amazon. But yeah, so this case came across 3 years ago is kind of when the tale started, where I was approached by Kerry King, who is the great nephew of Nellie King. And Nellie King and Burl Lewis owned a horse named Snippy. And this was really the first, before going viral was a thing, it went global around the world in 1967, September 7, 1967, of a horse in the San Luis Valley here in Colorado that died very mysteriously. And as fate would have it, in meeting the King family, the National UFO Historical Records Center out in Rio Rancho, who has original documents from Project Blue Book and NICAP and CUFOS and different organizations, just acquired the original APRO files, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization files that were missing for over 35 years.
Really?
And of course, me knowing that APRO investigated the ranch here, I couldn't wait to get my hands on these long lost documents. So I made an appointment, which anybody can go to their website and make an appointment to visit the archives and see all this material for yourself. You would need like 10 years to go through it, but if you need, it's amazing to see.
But it's easy to be able to make an appointment.
Oh yeah, you just go to their website and make an appointment, and they're open on the weekends, and you can go. And I recommend getting an Airbnb or a hotel and spending a couple days in the archives. It's amazing to see. But anyway, so I quickly go down there to see if I could find, more information on the landing site and the investigation here at the ranch. And Dave Marler drops down. He's like, here, you might be interested in seeing all the original APRO photos and reports and audio recordings from the Snippy event.
No kidding.
And my mind was blown because for the first time ever, there was a big controversy about Snippy's name. He went from a 3-year-old male gelding Appaloosa to a female horse named Lady. And so there was this big controversy about, is it Snippy, is it Lady? And in those documents, for the first time ever, were pictures of little Snippy, 1 month old, with his mother Lady and Burl. Only 2 known photographs of Snippy alive. With Mother Lady. And what's really cool about, there was probably 150 original photographs in there. And one of the neat things too, so there's the audio recordings that go with it. And back in the day, in 1967, we had the investigators there, and they were taking pictures, telling the number of the picture, and then would do the audio to match the photograph. So it's like, if you put it in, back in the day, you had the big slide decks. Mm-hmm. So you could put those pictures in a slide deck and hear the recording to go with the photographs. So it's like you're on the investigation hear photos and audio. So it was
Oh,
really neat
that's
to see that.
awesome.
But
Yeah.
to see Lady and to hear the story of the 4 horses that were pastured there. And that's one thing we learned right out of the gate was there was a black horse named Smokey. Smokey died the week before Snippy. And at the time, they thought maybe, and he was 14 hands high, 1,200 pounds. He was a large horse. He was saddled, he was rode, but he had some swelling on the back hip. So they made the assumption that possibly he died from a rattlesnake bite.
Oh,
But a
interesting.
horse being bit on the back hip, that it would not kill a horse at large. It would
Okay.
have to get him on the nose or snout and obstruct his breathing.
Nope.
So the week before, they lost Smokey, which really wasn't reported.
Sure.
And then, of course, Snippy is out on the pasture with his mother Lady, who is a dapple gray, also 14 hands high, 1,200 pounds,
Yeah.
and a third horse named Sheba. And so it was neat in those files were original maps of the scene of Snippy's death. And one of the maps that was there, and I'll send you a copy so maybe you can add it.
Absolutely.
But you could see it had rained that week, so the ground was very moist. You could see tracks very easily on the ranch, even so much as like little birds and things like this.
Okay.
But you could clearly see 3 horse tracks being almost as if something was corralling them, like a light, perhaps. An orb, a light. You could clearly see the 3 horses running like this. Then you see Sheba and Lady run off to the ranch house. You see the prints of Snippy milling in a circle, and then you see no tracks, and then you can see where he's dropped. And the reports differ in the distance, 35, 40 feet away from where he milled in the circle. He's dropped. And what's really interesting, so he was cauterized. All his skin and flesh was missing from the head up. Brain cavities completely gone and dry. Powder in the stomach. I mean, there was so many things on this case. But what's interesting is you can clearly see his back left leg was broken.
Okay.
So if he's dropped from above, that leg would break.
Yeah.
And then also something that wasn't really reported back in the day, the back right leg was also void of the hair and the flesh and everything. It was just bone. And the crazy thing is when they came upon Snippy, his bone was pure white, like it had been laying there for years. A week later, it changed to a bright pink. A week later, it was black. There was
Interesting.
a lot of evidence around. They found a strange tool in the Chico brush, imprints in the ground, sheared off fence posts. I mean, it goes on and on and on, the things that they found around this mutilation.
So wait a minute. Let me make sure that I have this right. So in the mud, or dried presumably by the time they found it, but at the time it was very wet, and so you can see the tracks of the other 2 horses, but Snippy's running in the circle, and then there's no tracks leaving.
Right.
And then somehow, miraculously, he ends up at a different location, not too far away, where you can clearly see that he was dropped, right, breaking the leg.
Yep.
And then what I understood you to say were, it almost sounded like medical. So you're saying it was like, we're not talking about animals gnawing off of it. We're talking about someone went in and started kind of poking around and slicing things off. Was that correct?
Right. So cauterized. So there was a Dr. Outschuler that examined Snippy's carcass.
Sure.
And even years, decades later, he's still as a medical, and he was a blood specialist and actually had uh, made medical tools. I mean, highly respected in this field. And back in the early days, he didn't want his name out there, right? But he
Yeah.
had a curiosity. He actually witnessed some UFOs craft over the great sand dunes and stuff. It's a really interesting
Really?
story. But what's interesting is, when they came upon Snippy's carcass, there was a medicinal smell. So very clearly there was a smell or odor around the horse. But yeah, it was like a cauterized, thick, uh, almost like leather around the outside of Snippy. Strange powder in his stomach. No blood, no blood like a lot of these other strange mutilated animals. And what's really interesting, because you could see the tracks so clearly, they could see coyote droppings, but the coyotes or no other animals would approach Snippy's carcass, which is very common in these strange animal deaths. No other animals will eat on them, come near them. And then later in the report, it stated that eventually when the coyotes did come to eat on Snippy's carcass, they died of dysentery.
No kidding.
Radiation readings initially around the area where they found Snippies were high, but the closer they got to Snippy, they lowered, which is actually opposite of what it should be. And again, I mentioned they found this strange, what they call a tool in these crushed and split Chico brushes. There were also like exhaust burn marks around the location in these large circles on the ground. There was a 175-foot circle, just like
Oh,
here at the landing site,
yeah.
and 5 15-foot circles also around the area of Snippy. But this strange tool, they had the Condon committee test it. I don't know what the results were like a seaweed kind of thing, like a some sort of organic seaweed that shouldn't even be in the area. But it was described as looking like a chicken gizzard.
Okay.
And then so Nellie picks it up with 2 sticks and kind of starts poking at it, and a green ooze comes out of it. And this
Wow.
green ooze was found around the carcass of the horse. So, and it wasn't just Snippy, the whole area they were seeing. And as a matter of fact, the ranch closest to the King Ranch was the Wellington Ranch. And they had so many strange animal deaths that they called it the Dead Cow Ranch.
Well,
And yeah,
with that right there, that brings up an interesting point that I was going to ask. When I think of this phenomenon, I always think of cow. Is it unusual that it's because this is a horse, but that doesn't seem like a very regular thing. Is that correct, or is it horses too?
it's more common than you think. Yeah, there was several horses that were found mutilated in the valley, and here actually, when I went to Florida to interview Bill Waugh's widow Jean and his son Keith, in the movie A Strange Harvest by Linda Moulton Howe, you can actually hear Bill Waugh talking about an encounter they had really close to this ranch here, where the family was out, you know, they see the horse right outside their window, and back in the day it's warm, they open the windows to cool off the homes and stuff. They looked out there and their horse was mutilated right there. So yes, it's horse. I found articles in the newspaper about dog mutilations, cat mutilations, sheep. I wonder about elk mutilations,
Yeah.
cow, horse. And then talking with Paul Sinclair in the UK and strange animal deaths there, they had a rash of like kangaroo mutilations. So it's not just cow.
What do you think they're doing? I mean, is it just like medical? They're trying to understand the biology of these animals, or is it something else entirely?
It's such a mystery, and there's been such good investigators trying to figure this out for decades. I can't begin to um, understand what's going on. I personally think there's a small sliver that might be, we're testing the groundwater, we're testing for mad cow disease, or, fallout from nuclear sites, and that we had what is it, the missile silo here, the Titan missile silos that are pretty close to here.
Okay.
And I know we lost him recently, but Chris O'Brien did a lot of work on Snippy and the Great Sand Dunes and on animal mutilations. And he actually created a map where he was looking at like nuclear test facilities or sites like this. And some of these mutilations are happening kind of downwind of that. So that would make some sense to me, but there's just no evidence for that. There's so many of these strange animal deaths that there's no tracks. There's no evidence for men even being around there. So what's happening with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. One of the strangest cases was in Rama, right over here. Her family actually grew up and raised cattle all in this area here in Kiowa. But right out of high school in the late 70s, she bought a lot of property with her new husband out there, and they had many cattle. So her husband was on horse checking the cows for calves. They were miles off the county road in the middle of nowhere. Calves dead, mutilated. There were 4 cuts in a perfect square. Top of the fur was removed, but the
Really?
calf was dead. So he goes and gets my witness, Sheila. They come back in the pickup truck. She said it took them 20, 25 minutes. And when they got back, organs missing, blood drained, cauterized incision, no tracks other than what the horse left. She said they felt watched. It was eerie. And how do you explain that?
Yeah.
And they had the pictures. So I have the pictures of that after the mutilation was done. So it's cases like that you hear, or like cows or cattle dropped from above that are left in trees, that kind of thing. It's like, what's going on with that?
Well, so I guess my question is obviously they don't want to be seen per se, or they don't want to interact with us, whatever that looks like. Um, but they're not covering their tracks very well. I mean, why do they send them back? Why don't they launch it into outer space or incinerate it?
Cows in space.
Exactly. But you see what I'm saying? I mean, if
No,
they
I
leave
know.
all this evidence, it's like, obviously it's a footprint that we
Right.
can track and say, okay, this is a little bit odd. And so what do you think their reason for
Yeah,
doing that
maybe
is?
they like the mystery. I don't know. I've heard rumors, through other investigators. I'm not sure if it was Linda Howe who said maybe they and some of these animals they have high copper in the blood.
Okay.
So are they making, like in the Carl Higdon case in 1974 in Medicine Bow, Wyoming, where he encounters these ETs, also one, and they float him these food pills, you know? So are they making food pills? Are they making food? I've also heard that ET, absorbs through their skin. So are they taking the blood of these animals
Yeah.
and certain organs that we don't necessarily want to eat because they leave the good stuff?
Sure.
Right? They don't take that, but they're taking certain organs and the eye and the ears, soft tissues, the tongue, whatever. And are they mixing it up? And they're just like, we don't have room for this on our craft. Just leave it there.
Just drop it.
Just drop it. I don't know. I don't know. Those crazy aliens. I know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Well, and so aliens.
Aliens.
Obviously, that's what we're discussing. What do you think they are? Where do you think they come from? Are they extraterrestrials? Are they interdimensional beings? I've heard some people say that maybe they live here under the ocean. They've been here since before we were. I've heard other people say that we were seeded on this planet. We came from Mars originally, and maybe they're our protectors and they're trying to make sure that we develop as a society. But what is the belief of Katie Paige? I mean, what do you think?
Katie Paige, probably all of the above. No,
All of
this
the
goes deep. No, I don't claim to have any answers on who they are, what they are, where they come from.
Yeah.
If there's life out there in the universe, or it's teeming with it, right?
You
So
think?
you would think. So there's possibly, who knows, right?
Mhm.
Hundreds, thousands. Who knows? I don't know. What do they want? What do we want? I don't know. It would run the gamut, I would think. And what's interesting, I mean, there were said to be two types here where we are sitting.
Okay.
Back in the day, the blonde, blue-eyed Nordics and these Tubi guys, and that they were in conflict with one another, and we were just like, if you don't mind us, we won't mind you, and let us do what we're doing. And it's interesting, looking at a lot of these older reports from the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, there were a lot of reports of, the classic landed ship with aliens working on their craft and they're wearing the jumpsuits with the insignias and you're like, how much of that is coming from, comic books and
Sure.
popular sci-fi movies and things like that, and it shifts. Or the other thought is, back in the day, a lot of these times people would see these, they would have like tools and they're taking soil samples or water samples, or they're putting needles in the navel and they're abducting people, which, and maybe they got all their information, so they're moved on. Like we got Earth figured out. We don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why it's changed. I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, do I believe in that there's life out there? Absolutely.
Sure.
Whether it's visited here, there's a lot of good evidence suggesting that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah. If and when we have more than disclosure, let's say that we finally have the craft that lands on the White House lawn. They march out, they say hello, and automatically at that point, we know that we're not alone in the universe. If it's in our lifetime and you have the opportunity to talk with one of these individuals, what is the one question that you want answered? What would you ask?
um, how are we measuring up, humanity, humans? And what are some recommendations on where we go, especially when it comes to AI and technology? That's been a thought I've had. Maybe they're monitoring, crazy humans to see where we go. I mean, you've heard it, like, a lot of the activity really started when we started messing with nuclear weapons. And
Yeah.
a lot of times through the research I've done, it seems like ET is interested in military families, military men and women, which makes sense to me. If I was going to visit a strange planet, I would want to look at the ones that hold weapons that can destroy destroy things.
Yeah.
So I think I would want their advice on how we survive. How do we get through this transition of AI and still retain our jobs and and live and energy and take care of our planet, all those things. So I'd look to them for advice because assuming they're way ahead of us and they've been through this process, I would hope they'd want to help guide us along that.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe they don't necessarily care what we do, you know?
Well, maybe. What was it in Canada? I think it was the prime minister maybe 2 years ago. And so we're talking someone with some cred comes out and says that, yes, aliens live among us. And apparently the way it was described, at least when I read the story, was, and there's video on this, if I'm not mistaken, but he describes it as almost like something you'd see out of Star Trek. You have all of these different civilizations coming together in space. We are looked at as the new kid on the block, and they know that we're like right there, right? We're at the precipice of where we're going to start going out there. And so they are trying to guide us, mold us into a situation to where we can join their intergalactic, whatever word you want.
Federation.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hope, first of all, I hope if they ever do land anywhere, it's not on the White House lawn. Don't do that. Land here. This seems better. No, just kidding. No, I agree with you. And also I wonder, like, is Earth like this melting pot, some crazy experiment? Somebody out there has thought, this is a school of hard knocks. Are they learning through us?
Yeah.
Again, with the black boxes, I came across documents that talked about these box soul recyclers on like,
Interesting.
yeah, in different locations. I'm like, that's interesting. Does it have to do with recycling our souls? Are they learning lessons through us? I don't know. It's things I've thought about in the past. Or, if we are in a simulated universe, that would answer so many questions for us.
Sure.
So if this is all just a simulated, then of course we could have aliens. We can have anything we want.
Yeah.
Just write it in the program. There it is.
And is that something that you are open to the possibility?
I'm open to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it just answers a lot of questions.
Man, the first time I heard about this whole simulation theory was on Joe Rogan. Again, I like Joe Rogan. And I can't remember his name, but there was a guy on there that claimed to be an expert and believed that we're living in a simulation. And I was like, this is such BS. I was like, oh, man, what is this guy? Why is this guy even on Joe Rogan's show? I do find it fascinating, though, where how many like bad things can you have happen in a row? You know what? I'll give you a better example. Luck, right? Just luck is a phenomenon. How does that work? That's got to be something that's programmed in. And the more you think about it, it's like, God, I don't know, man. Things don't seem so random to me. And so I think, yeah, it's a possibility.
Yeah, the coincidences and the synchronicities, especially when you talk to a lot of people that are open to these kind of unusual paranormal events in their lives, it upticks. And it's almost like the more you are aware of or are open to these kind of things, you're more, you notice things more. Now, I don't think it's just as simple as, oh, I'm going to go buy a Jeep, so now I notice Jeeps. It's beyond that. It's like synchronicities that are just beyond probability, like, and it seems to happen more and more. So yeah, for that reason alone, there's got to be more to this crazy world than what we all think.
I agree. I agree. Well, man, you have answered a lot of questions for me. You've opened many more questions that I think I'm going to have to research into. I think we're going to call it right there. But what I'd like you to do, because I know that this book is out there and I want to be sure our viewers and listeners can find it. Can you tell us again the name of the book and where they can find it when they want to purchase it?
Yeah, the name of the book is Snippy the Horse.
Okay.
So UFOs, mutilations. And you can find it on Amazon, and it's written by Tony Angiola and Katie Paige. And there's a few other great books out there too. Tony just republished the Socorro book on the Socorro landing. So check that one out too. And my original book, Letters of Love and Light, which is really a 3-year project I did, and basically went through all of Dr. Leo Sprinkle's files out of his archives and kind of shared all the really cool, exciting, juicy parts that I thought were interesting and put it into a book. So that's available as well. And you can go to RockyMountainRanchResearch.org and find links to those books there, or Katie Paige, Paige.net. and there's links to the books there as well. So
Fantastic. Viewers and listeners, definitely go check those out. Oh, and one other thing, what is your podcast called? You said you have a podcast.
I do. Every Wednesday night I go live. It's called The Trifecta with Katie Paige. It's Rocky Mountain Ranch Research's official podcast, and that's just kind of up and going. My YouTube channel is Rocky Mountain Ranch Research with Katie Paige on YouTube, so be sure to check that out as well.
Outstanding. Katie has been so amazing about getting this all set up, so please go to her channel, give her a like, and please subscribe so that way we can all grow together. I am hoping that she will be on again. We'd like to do this again sometime soon. Viewers and listeners, you've been amazing. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And Katie, again, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.
All right. Take care.